What's up? We are back after the summer off and summer hiatus. We are back with Black Art News. I have to bow to the one and only Dr. Eric Kelly, the man that makes this show possible. You know, I'm just a patron, somebody that just loves looking at beautiful things. You know, but this guy right here, this guy right here, he's the one. That dude next to me, that's the one. So, Dr. Kelly, how was your summer, brother?
Man, it was incredible. I mean, man, it was incredible. So many people want to see work, had a chance to just paint and they relax. But more important, I had a chance to do the Black Business Expo again. You know, we're moving into November, and November the 14th through the 20th is going to be the last one for the year before we do it every month. We've been doing it every other month. We moved from quarterly and for doing it one time. And man, it's been 3 years. You know, the pandemic, I think people really don't understand that the pandemic created a leap for many people. And that was a leap from how we did business until how we are doing business.
Right. Since we've been gone, I think you've done two Black Business Olympics. Um, can you tell? I know I was on one just this past 2 weeks ago, I believe,
Yes,
and
sir.
the one actually I was on both of them. Was did a substitute for somebody on one, and the other one I had my day. They were both excellent. You know, I think it's a lot though as you do when you do these summits or the Olympics. Can you tell us how you get it done? You have a staff of 14. A you know,
Hey, I really wish I had a staff of 14. What I tell people all the time because people ask me that question, how do you get it done? And the way that I get it done is one person at a time. I call it OPT. One person, OPOT. One person at a time. AT, either way. However you want to say it. And what happens is I
I
call
got
on
you.
people, I call on people and I ask them that one question. Do you want to build your digital footprint all over the globe? And the amazing thing is this: when you have a anchor or a moderator who's from Jamaica, you have a speaker from Australia, and then the next speaker comes from Brazil, and then the next one comes from Japan, then the next one comes from Vegas, the next one comes from Chicago. Now you're talking about reaching across the whole entire world where you don't get that opportunity. You know, I wouldn't have met you if I didn't reach out into a network that you're in, and you're way in New Orleans or Louisiana. And so that's what it's been able to do for me. I've been able to talk to people and get people to understand the way to build your digital footprint across this globe is to reach out and network. And it's just been awesome. But I'm glad to be back at Black Art News, Black Art News, Black Art News. You know, it's always great to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I see what you've been doing this summer. You've been out there really pumping out the work, or at least Brother Jermaine Moody over there in the Black Leaders Worldwide posted this last week, and I was like, wow, wow, um, that is phenomenal. And he gives you props, you know, he mentions the museum, and then he shows off this artwork that you did for him. You know, can you speak on? I mean, just it's a portrait, but it feels like a piece. I mean, the way the lines and are kind of they're almost in conflict. Like his forehead, you know, is that a frown, and then the nuance of his nose. I mean, there's just so much here, Doc, that I want to unpack with you before we jump into the actual Black art news. To say, first of all, excellent piece, and second of all, what's going on in this piece? It seems to be a lot of little nuances that I'm picking up.
Well, one of the things about this piece is it's about it is a part of the human landscape collection. And what human landscapes are, in my estimation, it is the spirit that runs through your face, how your face is able to exude power. If you notice the lines that you're looking at in this particular piece, you notice the highlights or spaces that are the landscapes in your face, that are the life force in your face. If you look at my face right now as I'm actually having this conversation, you know, I have lights going across my face. And so what I did was, as you look at the piece in the circle, you'll notice that he has lines going across his face. These are the lines of his human spirit that I see in his face. And then if you look at the piece on his nose, you'll notice that if you look at his actual portrait, as I'm a portrait artist, I do portraits, I do landscapes, I do abstract. But this piece is, I am forging together realism, abstract, and expressionism all in one piece, so that it's kind of giving you a different kind of flavor. As you notice, his mouth is in green, his eyebrows are in green, his his tone around his face is in green, his fingernails are green. That represents a emotion. Green represents a royalty number. Red represents a brilliance number, a brilliance color. And so the colors that I chose to use with him, even though it's red, it's white, it's blue, it's green, all of these colors represents an emotion that we have. You know, red could be anger, red could be fire, red could be subtleness, white could be fire, you know, but the black lines are the ones that encompass everything. And that is the piece that we push toward in this kind of style. I call it abstract expression, you know, and this is a part of the human landscape, as I said before, collection that I've done, you know, for the last 10 years, a style that I developed by looking at people's faces and how they present their emotion, because the colors, each color that I use are colors of emotion. So it's an emotional piece, it's a colorful piece, but in having conversations with him, it's the colors that I get from his voice. Because when I hear music, I see colors. And then when I hear you talk, I feel colors coming from your voice. And the human landscape is a part of those colors that I put on the faces of people. And not to mention the lines, the black lines that really denote your character.
I thought that, yeah, I thought that usually in these type of pieces, they usually don't feature as much expression.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the expression part, Martin, is where we come from as a people. You know, I've been watching a lot of other artists do work, and many of the artists are doing large scale pieces. And you know, the large scale pieces allows us as artists to really share with people our creativity. And so while we're having a lot of our artists doing gigantic pieces, I've been doing gigantic portraits forever. I can remember back in high school, when I was drawing with the shadow of Ernie Barnes coming from Durham, North Carolina. And many people would say, well, you're drawing like Ernie Barnes, or you're drawing like this artist. And my favorite artist, as I always say, was Charles White. Wasn't Ernie, was Charles White, who did realism. But when you begin to go into that form of art where you start drawing pictures of people's faces, there was a term that came along during my time called caricatures. And what caricatures turned into being a art form where the black artist's work began to be just what I would say devalued. And so what I decided to do was, instead of allowing people to devalue that art form, because when you go to get a caricature, if you want to imagine, when you go to the fair and somebody draws this caricature that looks like you, and they sell it to you for $4 or $5, $7 or $12, they are setting the tone for what you as an artist can get for your work. And so what I decided to do was to draw those pictures large, so that they would not only dominate your space, but make you have to look at the work to see the texture, to see the lines, and see the power and pressure that you're putting in that work. Because many times people don't understand artists. Artists are not sitting there saying, I want to do it, for commercial rights. Most artists want to do it for how they feel deep down inside, their inspiration, their feeling for what they actually are thinking. And so we created depending upon how we feel. My one line may not be the best line in the world. Your one line may not be the best line in the world, but it's your line. It's your colors that you use. So by drawing my pictures larger, then people were able to actually see what I was putting into the word. When you talk about the word masterpiece, many people get it kind of twisted, because they think a masterpiece is something that somebody says is a masterpiece. But a masterpiece is a piece where an artist takes all of his energy. And I believe all art is a energy form. Takes all of his energy, puts into that work, and makes that work say something to you. Okay, as you look at both pieces, the piece that you see behind me is a piece that I did in college in 1978. It was my third painting I ever did in life. Okay, now let's break it down for a moment. Okay, my first painting that I did in life was a painting of a slave. It was called Slipping into Darkness, where a slave was running with a ball and chain. And this was an image that was painted to me by my history teacher. My second painting was an abstract piece. And that abstract piece was a piece that I was experimenting with colors. And so with saying that, the more that I think about it, this one really is my fourth piece, because when I got to college, I hadn't had a long career of painting. And so I had to teach myself how to paint when I got in college. And so as I taught myself how to paint and learned through that process, this was my fourth painting. And some people would say that that fourth painting was better than all my paintings. Well, what I learned through painting, and as you see the two different ones, even though they look different, they still look like they're the same artist that did the work, because I'm still pushing my style, because I have a understanding of what a style is. Now, if you want to copyright a style, you know that you can't copyright a style. Now, the question becomes, if you're a music artist and you do a piece of music, and you can copyright that piece of music, and then you can sell that music, and then you can make a profit off that music over and over again. Now, with an artist that draws a piece, he can't copyright it, so it keeps an artist from earning a living. And so what many people don't think about when they say artists are going to be starving artists, they don't think about the numbers. And so what's happened with me, I understand the numbers. And when you understand the numbers, then you're not sitting around waiting for somebody to buy a piece of art so that you can survive. Because if you take the time as an artist, or whatever you're going to do, and you do multiple pieces of art and just sell them for $10 a piece, You can make a great living for yourself, but what is told to artists is you're going to be a starving artist even before you get started. And some of those things, cause a problem in the long run. And this piece that I did behind me was a piece I did in college. And I tell you, Martin, I did this piece off of an idea, and we can talk about that a little later. But the piece that I did for this gentleman was a piece that he said he really enjoyed, and this is a second one of the first one that I did. The first one that I did of him is larger than this one. I would say it's probably almost as tall as he is.
Wow. When you're doing that type of stuff, when you're creating this big, this big, huge, how should we put it, work, I think one of the things is that for a person who's not an artist and like myself, the space that you're in, are you standing on a ladder? Do you sketch it out first? All those things are things we're going to discuss next week, because we're going to jump into the Black Art News, and we're going to come back and unpack next week. So for those of you tuning in for the first time, every week we discuss Black Art News, and we try to spend a half an hour. To this week, we really wanted to show off some of our illustrious artists in residence, our art expert in residence, our art OG in residence, Dr. Kelly's piece, because Jermaine showed it off to the world on his LinkedIn, on his Facebook. He put it up, posted everywhere. And I want to make sure, a lot of times people say, well, who did that? And they say, Dr. Eric Kelly,
Where's he at? Where's he at? Where is he? Does he exist?
So this is on YouTube, Facebook, in 2 different art groups, live, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So when we Google the word Dr. Eric Kelly, hopefully one of these streams will pop up and they will see, oh, Dr. Kelly, I got you.
Well, one of the other things is that he posted this work, and after he posted this work, the people in Atlanta, Georgia saw the post, and he's receiving an award as an influencer and a gentleman who supports the arts. As he does support the arts, not only is he a great supporter of the arts, he's also a author of some very, very interesting books. So the next time people get an opportunity, then they check into his book. But the guy, man, he's a phenomenal guy. I address everybody as Your Majesty. I address all my Black folk, all my Black women as queens. I address all of my men like yourself as kings, and I address all of my young people as prince and princess and princesses, because at the end of the day, we are a royal family, and the art world is doing some great things as we're moving forward.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we're going to jump right into our first story from artnews.com. With his collecting and art patronage, Raymond J. McGuire ensures that artistic achievements of Black artists are centered in the canyon. And I was just reading his headline. I was like, well, what's the canyon?
The canon is the canon.
Canon. Okay, canon.
And,
thank
you. What has happened is this. Black artists have been abstract artists, they've been realism artists, they've been all the different traits. And the gentleman, he's out of New York City. He's also on the board of the Studio Museum of Harlem. And so what has happened is this, that we have kind of disproportionately been removed as Black people in the history of what art is. So when you go back and you start looking at art and you say, well, okay, you got Romare Bearden, you got many other Black artists, but when you start talking about Picasso, Rembrandt, when you talk about Michelangelo, the question becomes, were we doing art at the same time? And so that's what the canon is about. The canon is about, where did it start and where is it going? And so what many many collectors are doing, such as Pamela Joyner and of course Mr. McGuire. They are showing artists' work so that you can actually see the artist canon, which means that when Ernie Barnes was doing his work, from the time that he started to the time that he left us, that is a stretch of time that should be in the canon of all great artists throughout art. When you talk about Charles White's work was happening during different years. And each one of these years represent a time that artists was doing work that nobody was looking at, because the dominant artists not only in the press but all over the world is European art. Okay, you go from Greek, then you go from Western civilization and you go to America. And where are the Black artists who were living during the time that all of this art was happening? And so that is a part of what the canon is. And for those who have had an opportunity to watch what Pamela Joyner has done, right before the pandemic, she put on this great elaborate show. And I believe it was like 32 artists from around the world. And those artists were being shown so that people would know who are some of the Black artists. One of the things that was very important, there's an artist, and I can't think of his name at the present time, that was taking art and putting it on the canvas and taking a this long scraper, and he was scraping across the work. He was scraping across the work, and he was making great art. Well, there was a Black guy who was doing that way some 30 years before he started doing it. But the person who got credit for it was this other artist. And this is why the canon is really reflective of what history of art that was going on at the same time that we revere white artists. It's nothing against the white artists. It's not racism in terms of art, because in art is one of the only spaces that we can actually get in, create, and people can make a decision what they feel about it. And race doesn't matter. It always matters when it comes down to money, but it doesn't matter in terms of our creativity. And so that's what the canon is all about.
Got it. Really appreciate that explanation. For a art novice myself, super duper important. So the intention that this art patron does, do you think that that's something that should legacy wise, he's setting a tone and setting a path? And so we've been pushed, my generation, the 50-year-old Black generation, has been pushed into, collecting and being more active. Is this a path that every Black collector should start to look at? Where's my responsibility, and how am I centering Black art as part of the canon?
Well, the real serious reason that McGuire and Thelma Gordon are doing this is because you don't know who the Black artist greats are.
Correct.
It's easy for us to talk about art, what we like, but do you know who greats are?
Nope.
One of the things that is going on now in the art community is called doing survey shows. And what a survey show is, it shows an artist's work from when he started his journey to his time now. In other words, I'm an artist. I'm working on a survey show, and my survey show would show works of my work from 1969, because I do have some of that work, to 2022. Okay, that's a survey show. And what a survey show does, it just shares with you the progression of that artist. You may have never heard of me. You may know anything about me. But how do you find out, and how do collectors determine, how they feel about what you do? because I say this to all artists. I want you to really, really listen to what I'm saying. That art is your opinion. It's not somebody else's opinion. It's not somebody that's telling you what it is. It is your opinion. Now, with that being said, there are people out here who love your opinion of your creativity or your making of art. So, with that being said, you as an artist should put the value that you feel like the value of your work and work toward getting your work in front of those who love your work. Many times we get into this whole deal, I'm drawing for you, and I'm drawing this for you, and I'm drawing that for you, and we miss out on the real creative genius that you bring to the table. And that is why reading articles like this and looking at what Swiss Beats was doing, looking at what some of these other great people were doing, you will see that what they really are doing is giving you a history lesson on artists. So when you look at the value of art, you understand what you're buying.
I love that. I love that. That's appreciation. That was wow. That was almost not almost, was a mini master class. Like, so we didn't get the whole class, but we got a miniature version of it. That's deep. Thank you for explaining that. Thank you for bringing that out. Going to go ahead to our next article, which comes to us out of Seattle. And while this was posted in September, this actually was done in June. I was really excited when I read this article because I have a aversion, we'll say, to places like the Smithsonian African American Art or African American Museum, and how Black folks, we are running to these white establishments and turning our history over to them. Like so before, they had to break in and steal and rob and pilfer, pillage, our art. Now they just got to open the doors and put the word Black on top, and then we just come in and give it to them. Like, wait, what y'all doing? Well, no, it's at the Smithsonian. Okay, so what? Grandma Ruth's around the corner could have a Black art museum, and it's at the Smithsonian. It's right around the corner. All the kids in the neighborhood could actually go to which is what Dr. Eric Kelly has, the Eric Kelly Museum. But my point is that I have an aversion to that. So I was trying to think of, the average person can't open a museum and can't. But what we are able to do, I think, legacy-wise, family-wise, is that these families can definitely put together a website. I didn't think about this till I saw this project, and they launched a digital archive that could be endowed. You could web hosting for 50 years or 100 years. There's no limit to the amount of time these companies will take your money and make sure that this site is still there. Now, the company goes into, you got to have a conservator, obviously, give somebody a couple bucks every month just in case, and figure that whole thing out. But my point, the intention is probably for less than $1,000, you could have this 50 to 100-year digital museum plan. And I hadn't thought about it until I saw this article, and I was like, this is dope. An archive of the impact of Seattle's Black artists. And this is smart. This is super duper smart.
Well, not only an excellent, a brilliant idea in Seattle for this. Of course, they just made a mistake on. I'm looking at this. I need to call them. Hold it. Stop there. Go back. I want to point this out. Donald Byrd's name is up there. It says choreographer and dancer. We need to call them today. Let them know that Donald Byrd was a jazz musician. Jazz musician that I had an opportunity to work with. Unless that's another Donald Byrd.
Right.
His name that way. But this is awesome. This is one of the reasons that my great grandfather started me out on this whole Eric Kelly Museum at 7 years old. And it was all because he used to say, why don't we have our own stuff? Why don't we have our own museums? And just as you said, it used to be a time where they would go and just basically steal. And what is going on now, they're actually taking a lot of these guys who have stolen works from African countries and from other countries around the world, and they're beginning to prosecute them for stealing. And
Yes.
this right here is a part of what we should be thinking about doing for all artists, not just for Black artists, but for all artists. Because at the end of the day, once you archive it, then you can sell it as a digital copy as opposed to selling the original piece. And then the legacy part is that the kids can actually go and see the work. That's why when I talk about
right in their phone, right in their
yes,
hand.
yes,
And you can have audio. You might have what do you call the independent artists create.
you can have video,
audio.
you can
Yes.
have video, audio, the whole night. One of the challenges that I have, and I heard you talk, you stated about the Smithsonian Art Museum, and because I look at it different. They started their museum from slavery to freedom. Of course,
Yep.
a guy here in Durham, North Carolina, by John Hope Franklin, wrote the book From Slavery to Freedom. And my biggest challenge with that is there was Black people that was already here before the slaves got here. And if you're going to do American artist history, let's start there. Let's do the real work. Because if you put in my mind, and this is why the art canon is important. If you put in my mind that artists started during slavery,
Right.
you take away a critical growth issue in
Right.
terms of not only artists, but humanity. And when you take that, when you start pulling things away from humanity, now you're not dealing with justice. And one of the things about one of the reasons I went from doing pieces like the piece you see over my shoulder, which is realism and which is expressive artwork, and went into doing color, was because I wanted to utilize color as a way of changing the narrative of how you feel about art. And that's really what it's about. And many I was going to
No,
go.
you good. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and many of our artists, like Jack Whitten, many of our abstract artists, like right now, if I asked you right now, who is the highest paid living artist right now?
I have no clue.
You don't have no clue.
No, sir.
Many people would say after they watch Obama and Michelle Obama,
okay, yes,
lady and that the Kendi Wiley were the two highest paid artists, but they're not. The highest.
Wow.
Oh no. I actually cried when I found this information out, because I found it out when I turned 60 years old, and I'm 65. The highest paying artist right now makes $12 million in piece of art. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that I would be making $12 million a piece of art, but you think about a kid in 1978 who's an artist, and then somebody comes in and say, well, artists gonna be starving artists. You need to make sure you're looking at everything, and transform that artist into an advertising guy. Because advertising, you were told you can write your own ticket, and so you start doing advertising, but not stop doing art, and then find out later on you're trying to be a basketball player, you're trying to do all these things, but in reality, if you follow your dream, if you follow your guts, and if you can continue to duplicate what you do and become the very best at it, you can get paid for anything that you do. And his name is Bradford, and he's the number one artist. Living artist, $12 million a painting. Think about what I'm saying. $12 million a painting.
I'm thinking about it right now. like I'm in the wrong business. I mean, so let me ask you a quick question about that. When people say this, people joke about, oh, I'm in the wrong business, but I always think about the little small details it takes to get to things, right? But from what I understand, artists who are not quote unquote commercial, people who paint when they feel like it, or people who paint or get commissioned to paint the side of this building, or someone commissions a piece for them to do in the middle of the city. Those artists, they don't just go to their studio, in their garage or whatever, and just start painting and then produce it, and it hits 12 million.
Well,
it may take you 6 months before you even get inspiration. You're sitting at cafes all over the city.
Back up
okay.
For a moment. That's not how none of that works.
Okay.
Most artists wake up, live, dream, and participate as being an artist. There's a false statement that you need to be motivated. You need to something motivates you to draw, something motivates.
You need that muse.
No. You don't need none of that. What has happened? America has put so many negative connotations in the news and the press and on TV until you're almost convinced not to be inspired. And so the reason that Mark Bradford is where he is because he kept doing his craft, and he continued to network with the people who made his work become the $12 million figure. So it's more to anonymity, it's more to who don't know you than anything else in the art world. Because again, I had a conversation with a guy, and he was trying to say to me, because he said, you're a good salesman about your work. And I said to him, it's not about sales for me. It's about what I do. And I have never stopped drawing. And it is not about how much I make on my work. It is about the work that I do. And that is the most important part of what artists think about each and every day.
So when we talk about, writer's block, or even,
creative,
right? Creative, right?
Created. Right. It's created. It is, and some people are going to say, well, Dr. Kelly, you just can't say this in public. But I'm going to say it. There are a lot of things that we do that are created so people don't have to do anything, so incompetent people can survive on this planet. I'm gonna say it like that. Maybe somebody caught me. Maybe somebody heard what I said. But if you think about it for a moment,
yes,
if you are a great creator and you're creating tons of work,
yes,
and somebody comes along and say, well, you don't have to work that hard. You create when you want to create. And then they create something to say, let's call this writer's block. When have you ever heard of air block? Have you ever heard of air block?
No.
When you live in here, right? But you never heard of air block. Okay. If you haven't heard of air block and you live in, where does writer block come from? It's a mental statement. Has nothing to do with you. You still woke up. But again, I know I love it. This is what I miss about this show.
Well, I think the other thing about that, when you just said that, is that about what's manufactured and belief system, and it aligns perfectly to one of my terms I hate, and I even hate it more, and I found out where it comes from, is that term imposter syndrome. When you understand the history and you look up the word in the history, it was created to explain why women will probably be nervous when they get into the workforce in the 70s. It was really just disturbing that, to your point about, concepts on categories of words or language or terms, that to me, everybody at some point needs inspiration, and everybody at some point can feel like they're stuck, or they may not, just may not be in the mood today. And
they can always say to you, that's what I have.
Right.
Now what's key, what's been key to me is that my phone's gonna ring. What's key to what you're saying is this, and I want you really to hear this part, because this is the cream, right? This is the good stuff. What you talking about? You know, when you talk about writer's block, and you begin to talk about um, what is created, words that are created for you to say writer's block. When I learned about advertising, if you go the, the library and read what advertising means, and advertising means is to tell you what to think. I want you to let that absorb in the audience. Advertising is not, most people think advertising is marketing. Advertising is not marketing. Marketing is the gas that pushes the thing down the road, but advertising is the bells and whistles, which means advertising tells you what to think about that car, tells you what to think about that product. Okay. So if I'm advertising subliminally on TV that artists are going to be starving artists, and it becomes a known fact, what happens to the word art? What happens to the word artist? So when your mother and your daddy say, well, you are not to be no artist because an artist is going to be starving, and she's perpetuating that idea, the commercials are perpetuating that idea, and it's a negative statement, guess what you get? You get people who don't want to be artists, who are creative people, who, if they understood the numbers, they could make a good living for themselves.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. Want to go to our next story before you run out of time, hit these last two stories. And there's a new spot for Black culture and artwork in the Central District. And again, we're hitting on Seattle for a couple of reasons. One, I want people to think about, just where Black folks can go and get paid. And also, I want folks to see, how other communities are embracing art. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, we'll be able to do a story on South Carolina and Asheville and a bunch of other places. And I know we will. And in the mainstream media, I have never seen a story about Black art. Now, I don't read Sunday New York Times, so I can't say that they don't have it there. And I can't say it's not in the Washington Post. And I can't say it's not in LA Times. But when I say mainstream media, I'm talking about mainstream media around this country. Mm-hmm. And so I think that one of the challenges we have as a show is to highlight all the local art stories around, all the local Black art stories around the country that their local press is covering. And we as a community may not never be, how many of us read Seattle Times? So, but yet you see this beautiful, story, and look at these shots. They didn't just take some shots from, somebody's Instagram. You can tell they sent a photographer, and his name is right there, Daniel Kim. So when they send a photographer to a story, it changes the way that coverage is viewed. And you start to see yourself, representation is important and matters. And so the next time someone says have a gallery showing or have a showing, you're like, yeah, I want to go. It might be some, might we get somebody's article. Or you may say, hey, can y'all cover this? Because I'm going over here. You may have a friend at it.
And that is the difference, Martin, than being a great artist, a good artist, or unknown artist. Like I said, the pandemic turned this into a leap because now people at home having conversations, something we stopped having. And the art community made a decision that we're going to stand up as Black artists and be counted. And what has happened is that many of our curators and many of our collectors have made the same decision. And so what you're getting now when you're looking at Seattle or New York or Chicago, you're getting these great stories of artists you never heard of. And the question becomes, as we talked about the canon, and we can begin to talk about the different museums all over the world and how many museums are named after our great Black artists. There is no Ernie Barnes Museum, even though here in Durham, North Carolina, he's from, we don't have an Ernie Barnes Museum. Why we don't have? a Charles White Museum? Why we don't have a Romare Bearden Museum? Why don't we have these great artists museums? If you go to Europe right now, there's a Van Gogh Museum, Michelangelo Museum.
Right, right.
You go around the country, there's a Jackson Pollock Museum. There's museums all over, and that is the part that we miss, because when you start talking about great stories like this in Seattle, where is the Black Seattle Museum that these kids that are taking pictures with that artist can go and be inspired to do great art because they are talented?
Exactly. And in this time where we know that Black mental health, according to yes, Black people, mental health is a big issue. According to CVS's latest survey of its customers, the Black customers have keyed in on mental health at a rate of 11% more than they did last year in the same survey. Mm-hmm. Art is a great balancer of and can be used as therapy. So we definitely need, like you said, to really look at art in our community as part of our daily life versus just showing up.
And that is why the colors play a very major part of what I do. Colors represent emotions, and emotions represents feelings. And if I can pull a feeling out of you, I've done my part. I used to teach at a school here that was a lot of talented kids, and I was working with them, and they really enjoyed the work. And then I had a chance as an advertising agency to work with a group home organization, which was the largest group home in the state. And I began to do little shows in their spaces, and you would be surprised how the mentally ill, as they called them, reacted to the colors and the pieces that I was doing in those spaces. And I think that's one of the things that we have to do. But many of our artists need to start putting in for some of these great prizes that are out here that we talked about a little bit earlier.
Yep. I wanted to just go over this prize, which is $500,000. These two women, one from the Heinz family. That's Heinz ketchup family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to me a rarity that I see Black women in the art space winning awards like this for the art prize, each taking home $250,000. And
well, you know what's interesting about that prize? While we're doing this whole thing about Black women and Black women, and that $250,000 prize equal $500,000. And one of the things that people don't realize, artists, and I'm glad we own this, because I think our artists need to know that there are some prizes larger than that women are winning. There is one prize, a Tokyo-based financial company, Nomura Holdings, launched the $1 million award prize, and it was given to a Black woman. Then the Kyoto prize is $900,000 that's given to advanced technologies in basic and science, the art and philosophy. And then the Macarthur Genius Award. The Macarthur Genius Grant is given to people, and they give it to artists, poets, thought leaders all over the world. And it's $650,000 that they give, and they give it out in installments over the course of 5 years. But what could you as an artist do with $650,000? Then there's the Dorothy and Leonard Cash Award, which is $250,000. Not to mention Sotheby's prize for $250,000. And the reason that I'm able to talk about these prizes is because that's the part of art that we missed. We can talk about art all day, but what about the business side of art? What about all these great prizes that are given out? As I was talking about, there's an art prize for $200,000. The Don Tyson prize is $200,000. Some of you artists out there probably say, I never heard of them. Today, take the time and go out and research these prizes, and put your put your greatness in front of these people, because at the end of the day, these prizes are real. The Susan Deal Booth Prize is $200,000 plus a $600,000 for a catalog and an exhibition, and the list goes on and on and on. Man, I could go all day about these prizes. I need one of these prizes. And as we go further talking about these prizes, I see you got the Hans Art Prize, and I want to celebrate these two ladies because again, this is awesome.
Yes, and I like what you said about you winning your prize. I was saying shout out to Sister Price, who's on Facebook watching us, and also Cam Humphreys, and a couple other folks, Lakeisha. I'm trying to see the other one more person, but our Facebook comments don't show up over here on StreamYard. So thanks for everybody tuning in. And yes, I agree with you 100%, Dr. Kelly. You definitely deserve a prize. We're gonna make sure that we get you up there more in the zeitgeist.
It's who knows you, Barton. I'm not sitting around. To be honest, I'm not sitting around waiting for a prize.
Right.
What I'm doing is I'm doing the work.
Exactly.
Because my great grandfather said to me, if you don't value your value, then your value won't be valuable. If you don't be relentless and do the work, it can't happen. I remember Jay-Z said, and I thought it was just a phenomenal statement. He said, do you have a breath of work? Do you have a breath of work? It's great to be a great rapper, but what is your breath of work? See, my breath of work goes all the way back to 1969 to now. That's a voice of work.
Yep.
Okay? So when we do get to that point, and I know sooner if in my lifetime I get to that point, whenever that happens, you won't knock on my door or on my museum door and say, Eric, we'd like to see some of your work. And then I have to say, well, look, I need to draw some, and I need to paint some more. I need to do this. No, being an artist is more than a lifestyle. It is an existence. That's why I wanted to point out about all of those great prizes out there, because what happens, we don't know it. We don't have a clue. So we're working in a vacuum, not understanding that there's $650,000 sitting on the table only if somebody knew who you were. And because we don't get involved in the whole advertising, public relations, and marketing piece, because we are beat down by society that says an artist is a recluse, says an artist is this, an artist is that, then what am I?
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
I feel a theme coming on. I don't know how you feel about this, but I think that you could do a nice campaign around I am Black art, or what is a Black artist, and really be able to frame in your where you're coming from as far as what society tells you an artist is. And then so on one side you could have a word like dysfunctional, and the other side that's the word in black and white. On the other side you have a picture of an artist, and underneath their picture of their work, to your point, the body, the canon of what they've created. So one side white word, size and color, and it's Ernie Barnes, or it's Charles White, or it's these different artists, to frame that one, a Black artist isn't this or that, but then two, a Black artist has this or that to contend with that may not. To your point, I remember many of white kids will say they're taking a what do they call it? Taking a gap year. Can you imagine a Black kid coming home saying, "Hey, mom, I'm going to take a year off from college"? She would be like, "What?"
And what you just said is so. I think sometimes when we're having conversation and dialogue, people miss the what you really said, because in history, we have never taken a day off as Black folk in history. Okay. Right. But in recorded history or in history that's put in your face, we have taken 400 years off. So you're saying to me that the 359 years of slavery, there were no artists, okay? And then then after Reconstruction, that 150 years, now all of a sudden we drawing and we painting. You see what I'm saying?
That's a good point. Yeah.
One of the things that we have to always press in terms of the envelope, we have to begin to say that what you just said. Okay, if you look at me, if I've been drawing and painting since 1969 to now, okay, what has happened in history, not what has happened to me, but what has happened in history from that time to this time. And
Right.
that's not putting me in a space. I'm talking about putting all the artists who have existed from that time to this.
All the artists.
I'm talking about
All the artists.
Okay, so when you see these stories come out now, you're starting to see where people are saying, oh yeah, we got this artist in Seattle, we got this artist in Buffalo, we got this black artist here. It's just like Black Wall Street. You know, people won't talk about Black Wall Street the way I talk about Black Wall Street, because when I was a kid, I could walk to Pettigrew Street and go to the black movie theater, go to the black bank, go to the black barbershop, go to the black hotel. And then I grew, it moved across the track to Perry Street, where North Carolina Mutual was, where Mechanics and Farmers Bank was, which turned into this big giant thing for black business. But this was happening all over the world. So when you talk about the canon of artists, it's just like talking about the canon of business. The canon of business is just as big as the canon of art, but nobody sits back, documents, or celebrates it in our community. When you started earlier about the Smithsonian, when they did African American Museum, everybody and everybody's mama started bringing in things. But at the end of the day, nobody asked the question, if we bringing in stuff, what is going to be the narrative for the museum? And so my biggest disappointment, I don't care what nobody says, my biggest disappointment was when I got to the museum, it started from slavery to now, which just really snatched a big part of humanity out of the museum. And if you go to a white museum, it'll start how far back? Back to Africa.
It'll start at the Greek. They'll have the fifth, yeah.
And then it'll come all the way up. But then
and they'll talk about
when we start with North America, it starts at slavery, because the narrative that wants to be painted in America the Beautiful is that's when we started as black people. And if we had more museums that was put on by black folk, the narrative would change.
I totally agree with you. Thank you, Dr. Kelly, for hanging out with us. And we're going to be back next week, Wednesday, at our normal time at 3 p.m. to discuss more Black Art news. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. And we'll see you back next week.